Welcome to Do Not Go Quiet.
Here's the deal. I'm the best there is, plain and simple. And nobody can hang with my stuff.
With Eric Wilson.
There's a big, hairy American winning machine.
Big dog.
How you doing?
What's up, my brother?
Good to see you again.
Todd Hill in the mix. So obviously we chatted a little bit ahead of time, but I just to start this thing off wanted to go into a little bit of our history. Like literally, we've known each other since elementary school.
Back to the 70s.
Yeah, part of this whole podcast thing for me was, exploring stuff that we grew up with, that kind of what we're dealing with now, but also I like this kind of is the kickoff and just going back and talking about growing up back then, how much different it was than our kids are going through, and some of the things that were amazing about it. So talk a little bit about growing up and just going to school together and some of the stuff you experienced even without, us together. But we were at Sandy Hill, right? Weren't we together at Sandy Hill?
Yeah, I think I started in pre-K kindergarten. I think you were probably there just a couple years after. Small little school district. You remember, we could just ride our bikes to everyone in Jenison, 10 square miles.
I think my folks moved us into town like fourth grade or something.
Okay.
And you were one of the first people I met, along with some other people. But that whole concept of getting on a bike and riding all over town, I talk to my kids about that, and their minds are blown.
Yeah. That's excellent point. Most of them don't know how to ride bikes, or they don't ride them. So why would you do that? Just pull them up on your phone.
Right? Yeah, I know. Like, can I just get an Uber or something like that?
Why would I want to go see him? I can just play games this way on our devices together.
Yeah. So elementary school was, and what's your earliest elementary school memory?
I think it also relates back because we were both Georgetown United Methodist Church when they met in Sandy Hill, our grade school, before they actually had a building.
The gum folks?
The gum folks, that's right. Probably for grade school would be the playground equipment. Solid steel. If you remember, the maypole hung on about a 20-foot chain with rings, and you would fly around on them, or with Scott Crowley, whip them around and see if you could beam someone in the head.
And those rings weighed about 1 million pounds. Like they were solid freaking steel at the end.
You'd get carried into the office with some bloody faces, some chipped teeth, and with some bruises from that. If that wasn't enough, too, remember the jungle gym was solid steel, about 15 feet off the ground, and you would sit and bounce and swing on that rope that was up even higher, and heaven forbid you lost your balance, you'd go tumbling down to dirt, because that was before the mulch days.
Would that be considered a safe space today?
That's happy to report all of that equipment's been removed. It's all at ground level now.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like there's no climbing up in the air and doing anything that takes any kind of risk. It's all like, oh, let's make sure we protect ourselves.
Yeah, even the little 10-foot sledding hill's been flattened for a parking lot, because you don't want to have any high-speed crashes that way.
How do you think that affects your kids? Your kids you got one in college, one in high school. Them growing up, how is that different than us growing up?
I think it's kind of an innocence and just a freedom loss. Just as a kid, go out and entertain yourself, get together with your friends and figure out what to do, whether it's at recess, summertime, or on weekends. If it's not, for my kids, especially my son, if he's not gaming, he's kind of at a loss to figure out what to do. And it's like, dude, the world's out there. Let's go get it.
I'm bored. Yeah, I'm bored, Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember. Like I literally remember like jumping on a bike, leaving at 10 or 11 in the morning, and not coming home until the sun goes down, right? And you probably pick up a phone sometime during the day at somebody's house to let your mom know that you hadn't been abducted.
Yeah, and that was kind of understood, or it was the silent code of the parents that if we don't hear anything, we're just going to assume everything's okay and especially summertime, have them home sometime around dark. If not, let us know that they're going to be a little bit late. And to your point, you can't do that anymore.
You could. Could you? I mean, can't you can't or we don't? Like,
Maybe both.
do you think if you did like obviously there's so much our kids are impacted so much by social media and what they hear they should and shouldn't do, and obviously their phones have like tethered them to a completely different world that we didn't have, where they can sit in their room and still, do all these other things. But do you think, like, if they tried to do that, would you let them? Like, let's roll back to 5th grade, 6th grade, and your son or daughter was like, "Hey, I'm gonna get on my bike and disappear." Like, would you let that happen?
And fairly a double standard. Probably no for my daughter, not because I don't trust her, just I want her to be safe and know where she's at. And my son, it's like, knock yourself out, kid. Just we'll track you down eventually if you don't make it back.
It's part of becoming a man.
Just go get it. See what gets a little mischief, just not a
Yeah.
lot of mischief.
The thing that's most imprinted on me from that school was when I was in 6th grade. You remember this, but we had this 6th grade camp, right? Like, no one would do this now, but they
I know
loaded
where
up.
you're going, my man.
They loaded up the entire 6th grade on a bus, took us to Sandy Pines. There's no phones or anything like that, and it was like you were gone for a week.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if our parents ever heard from us, but I was probably the biggest wussy. Like, when it came to, I was good sleeping over at a friend's house, but the idea of like going away, I don't know why, I was just like petrified by the thing.
Yeah.
Nowadays it would be like, oh, stay home, you're okay, big Judas beat. Like, my mom was like, you get your ass on that bus, you're going. And I think it was the first day I was a freaking train wreck. Do you remember that or no?
I do remember it, and I just remember that you look forward to it. You remember, like, that whole semester leading, or that whole time leading up to it, you met in your groups, and you had those handkerchiefs, and you had to have a theme and like a song that went along with it, because you were in your groups at camp the whole time. And the highlight, we kind of started to notice the females, and there was that square dance one of the last nights. And I thought, oh boy, we might have to hold hands or get close with some of the gals from Sandy Hill.
That was, but for me, it was like an entire semester of terror because I did not want to go. Like, I don't know why. I was just like afraid of being gone. I don't know if I thought like Jason was going to kill me at the camp. I can't even remember. I just remember being petrified. And it was the first day. Like, I literally have this burned into my brain. It was the first day, and I don't remember at the end of the day, they like took all the picnic baskets, picnic tables, turned them upside down so that all the V's were like this, and they put aluminum foil like from the length of the room on those, and created this huge ice cream sundae.
I do remember that.
A petri dish. They would never do that today. Like, oh, you might get COVID and die. But it was like I was sitting out on the porch, like lamenting my situation and just being miserable. And the teacher, Mrs. Vanderjack, my 6th grade teacher, came out and sat down with me. She literally, like, this was probably one of the biggest things that ever happened in my life. She literally sat me down and said, okay, look, here's the deal. If you want me to, I'll pick up the phone, call your parents, and have them come pick you up. But if you do that, you're going to be a quitter, and you're going to quit the rest of your life. And all these kids are going to have a blast, and they're all going to be talking about you. She's like, or you can suck it up and go inside and have a good time. And I don't know what, she freaking flipped the switch. It was over. I went inside, had a freaking blast, and it was amazing. And like, that was literally kind of the end of me being scared of stuff. But it was like a seminal moment in my head that just occurred in 6th grade. It was crazy.
Well, you hit it well, because I don't remember that. And I always remember you just kind of being that red-blooded American boy that made the best of everything, regardless of the activity.
Yeah, well, that happened after that. Before that, I was a big wuss bag. And you were talking about the scarves, right, that we had to wear, that everyone wore. We named ours the group. right? Everyone had like a fan, like Panthers or whatever, and we were like the group, and everyone's like, "That's stupid." But then it kind of became cool. The worst part about it, do you remember my nickname in elementary school?
There were a
AKA
few that
Scott Lancaster gave it to me, the bastard.
I know there were a few, but refresh my memory.
It was Tubbs.
I
Literally.
remember EBIDG and
Yeah.
EW, but I don't. That wasn't very nice.
In middle school, it became E-dubs, and then it became Bidge or whatever, in high school. But Scott Lancaster called me Tubbs. No, like no one else really did it unless they were trying to like buddy up with him.
Right.
And on my freaking scarf, he wrote something like Tubbs, it's been a great freaking camp or some shit like that. And I was like, oh my gosh.
He was in that special group, the Brainiacs. They were a little odd, anyways.
I was very happy to be in middle school after that.
Do you also remember? I won't throw his name out there, but someone kind of went in his skivvies through one of the girls' cabins and was almost sent home and broke down in tears because it was kind of a dare. No way is he going to do that. And I don't even think they were in there. It was like on our hike to Chief Noonday. That Soup Bowl.
Yeah, I remember
the
big hike. Yeah.
And he, peer pressure in Lord of the Flies, off he went. And he came out and we're like, yeah. And someone found out, like, oh, you're going to get sent home. And he was just terrified.
Oh my gosh, that was freaking classic. So when did you move? Because we were in the same school. Did you go to middle school at Jenison, or when did you move to Hooter?
Yeah, midway through my sophomore year is when my parents, not holding a grudge, decided to move 4.5 miles away to a different school district.
Yeah, and there was no school of choice back then. It was like you're going to wherever your district is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's rough in the middle of high school, man.
Oh, right? Because that's, to your point, we grew up together. So those last 2 years are kind of the highlight, the icing, and you want to make the best of it. So as you kind of remember, the junior year, I made a lot of good friends at the other school, but senior year circled back and still ran with you guys.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was kind of like you went over there, you kind of got in knee deep with a bunch of folks. And like you said, we didn't see much of your junior year. And then all of a sudden your senior year, it was like, ooh, T-Bone's back. Here we go. Let's roll.
Made that commute on my bicycle, that 4.5 miles back into J-Town.
So,
yeah. I was going to just say, the other appeal is, remember, the social activities is every weekend we had 2 different houses to go to hang out because respectively, their parents were out of town, and kind of, Eric, Todd, you guys are in charge. It's like, of what?
Of
our house when you're
the whole Arkema house. What was the other one? I can't remember.
Pauline's. Pauline's in the weekend. Her parents always went out to their boat, and Fred would say, stay out of my booze, but just keep an eye on everything. So, translation: go ahead and drink all my booze and have a good time.
Yeah, I remember one weekend at Harkema's house. I can't remember who it was, but somebody put their fist through the wall, like on the right going up the stairway. And it was literally like 3 a.m, and me, Danzig, and maybe Woody. I can't remember. We literally got out the freaking spackle, and we were like spackling the wall, and sanding it down with freaking sandpaper, trying to paint it, and so that so her mom wouldn't recognize it when she came home on Monday.
Yeah. Sadly, most of our fondest memories are kind of that mischief that we used to do in high school. It was, who's going to end up getting the stuff for us? And back in the day, it wasn't a matter of fake IDs. It's just, where could you go? Because you knew the guy wasn't going to check your ID. And here we go.
La Palmas. Wasn't it La Palmas? Down in, I can't even remember what we called it, but it was like a little Hispanic area of GR. And there was this joint called La Palmas, and they never ID'd you. It didn't matter. Like, it was a little bit of a drive, but oh man, that was funny. Freaking Pauline and Sally. So when you think back just about that decade, like what are the things like that jump out, like in terms of this kind of defines the 80s? What are the things that were kind of new and exciting?
Yeah, it was probably a precursor of social media, just MTV coming on cable television. You were glued to watch the videos at night, and then remember going to Believe in Music to get the latest and greatest until your Levi's jean jacket with the MTV pins and who got the most on their jacket.
I have not thought of Believe in Music in like 40 years. I can't believe you remember that. Did you watch that Buggles video did you watch that live?
Was that the one radio
Video
or
killed the
video
radio
killed?
star. Yeah, it was the first one they ever played.
My memory's not as strong. I'd like to say I did or certainly was aware of it. My mom
Yeah.
ran a tight control on remember the first cable box had that 20-foot string on it and you could zip line it back and forth on the cables and she'd get a little upset if we'd try to spin over to MTV with that.
Oh man. So I remember Big Jer wouldn't pay for cable at my house. So there was like no cable happening, bro. None. So I always used to have to like get on the bike and pedal over to S. Lancaster's house to get
Yeah.
cable because Big Don was floating the cable, the HBO. Like it was like we always wanted to stay over at Lancaster's because we could watch HBO after dark.
You're not kidding. Not just basic, but HBO. And to your point, late at night, that's where the good movies came on. Revenge of the Nerds, Porky's, Stripes. Those were the movies that taught us how to be cool teenagers.
They were. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I remember The Hitcher. Remember that HBO series, The Hitcher? It was like about this hitchhiker who always like seemed to be around trouble and then he would like find his way out of it and hitchhike back out of town.
Yeah, that was a weekly event, wasn't it? Usually on Friday night or something along that
Yeah.
line.
I think the fact that you like couldn't access everything all the time made it better. Because I feel like our kids are numb just from the constant, like they can find anything anywhere. We had to go kind of sit and wait for it or take whatever they, played. But it was like you said, it was kind of this, it was almost an inch, like it was this huge new media that we had access to, but it was like you had to do it by appointment. You had to go make yourself available.
Excellent point. You'd make your phone calls early in the evening to say, hey, what's going on tonight? And once that plan was made, it's like, all right, I'll see you there. It's not like we'd get to the destination and say, all right, we better call these guys and, text them or FaceTime them and tell them that what we're doing. It's, hey, we talked about this morning. This is where we're at. You miss it, you miss it.
No, you're exactly right. I was I don't know if you ever do this, but I literally still have dreams like I'm being in high school. And it's not like, oh, I dream about being on the football field, or like it's always a dream about somebody's doing something and I'm like either missing it or I'm on my way to it, or we're like, it's always about like the group of people that we hung with.
Yeah, I agree. And when we were together, it wasn't, hey, I got to quick call these people and see what they're up to. It's like we're in the activity, we're enjoying the moment. And what we talked about earlier, the kids don't get to do that. Even if they're at an activity or doing something, they're checking to see what everyone else is doing or where they're at. It's like, how are you enjoying this when you're so worried about everything else?
No, you're exactly. I think that's such a huge point. The idea of being in the moment, and like you said, if you didn't get dialed in during the day to figure out what was happening, you were hosed. Like you weren't. And so the FOMO didn't happen while it was happening. The FOMO happened either during the day or the next day when you were like trying to figure out where's everybody going, and maybe you're for some reason not at school, or you had to go do something, but everybody else is hanging out trying to figure it out, and then it's like 6:00 at night and you're like, where is everybody? And you don't have any idea where they are because you didn't talk to anybody. Or
Well,
I remember sometimes did you run with Troy?
No, mine was a different group. And if you didn't make it out, it was always head to 7-Eleven or head to Triss's. Those were the two meeting up spots before we'd get started on
Yeah.
our weekend.
Big Triss. That's funny. Yeah, it was. It seemed like the 50% of the time it was the gravel pits. It was just a question of which pit you were going to.
And I still don't know if that's been developed back in there. It's chained off, and now they have big sand berms and cement columns. But what a great little gathering spot. Little, what was it, Rush Creek that ran through it. So you could kind of evade the authorities if you wanted to hang out for a little bit.
Yeah, and everybody would just go back there and drop the tailgate to the truck or whatever. Somebody always had a boom box, and then you'd start a fire. And it was like, let's hang out around the fire in the gravel pits. Our kids would probably be like, what? Why would you do that?
Or after junior and senior year, when the school year ended up, everyone would get their hands on a trailer and go camp out to the beach for a week. I
Straight
don't
to
know that
Holland.
anyone does that anymore.
No, I've told my kids that story, and they were like, are you kidding me? Your parents let you do that? I was like, yeah, I literally wouldn't talk to them for a week, and we were juniors in high school. I remember, like, we went out and we would have like 3 or 4 trailers full of guys on one side, 3 or 4 trailers full of the gals on the other side. And it was just like sleep and then get up and hang out and go play volleyball. And it was just like literally just chill the whole week.
It was a great week hanging with your pals, all the people you went to school with. Nice to have the ladies, laying out with them, and then have, to your point, scoot. Remember that you used to cruise the circuit at night in the cars. So you'd either cruise or you'd park your car and turn the music up a little loud to try to gather some attention.
Yeah, there was this like parking lot, but it had driveways through it, and so you'd like drive. It was almost like a snake type of thing, and like when you were younger, you were kind of driving, trying to figure out where the cool people were, and when you got older, you parked because you were the cool people.
That's a rite of passage.
That's right. You're like, oh, we're parking because we're freaking sweet, and people are coming to us now.
And again, the innocence, after hours, they'd lock that up, and they had, it sounds bad, but some larger sized park rangers. And you remember a good buddy of ours was trying to sneak some stuff in, and they kind of caught him, and they said, freeze. And as he froze, something fell out and broke, and they said, that's it, we're going to arrest you. And he looked at him and said, you're not going to catch me. And he took off running.
Did his last name start with an F?
P.
Ah, yes. Okay.
Now, I wouldn't put it past the other fella either. He probably did something like that too. Or if you remember from the beach too, we all went down to Hoodlum Beach, which made sense. You'd drive 8 miles down the shore, climb up one of the largest sand dunes down to the other side.
Yeah.
Most of us went back because it started rain, and 2 of our colleagues decided to stay out the whole night during the thunderstorm and rain without shelter. What parent is going to let their kid?
Well, I mean, shoot, now you got like Life 360. You know where your kids are every second of the day. Back then it was just like our parents were like, I hope they roll home alive. Like, that's the win.
Do you do that? Does your bride do that, or you do that? Because I don't have it on my phone, but I know my bride is always checking. So I just want to see what they're doing. Man, just let them be, and maybe that's kind of a lazy attitude. It's like,
yeah,
they got to go through this.
We both have it. I don't really check it that frequently. She checks it a lot more often than I do. The only time I would check it is if it was like I was worried about her and needed to try to figure out what was going on with her. The 2 older ones are out and doing their own thing, and then Cole Trickle's he started paying for his own phone so he could get it off, but he's like 20, so
got it.
But yeah, it's kind of I'm more of my daughter actually for about 6 months got rid of her smartphone and went to a flip phone to get away from social media and all that kind of stuff. But she couldn't put Life 360 on it. So my wife was not a huge fan of the flip phone because she didn't know where she was. I put like one of those little Apple tags on the back of it. But those aren't like they don't work off of a satellite like 360 does. They basically ping other Apple phones, so they only like update every once in a while. So they're not as but yeah, I think if our parents knew where we were like 3/4 of the time, we would have been in trouble all the time.
Yeah, excellent point. I was just thinking that. I'm very glad we didn't have those type of tools. The worst thing they would ever do is wherever we'd say we were sleeping overnight, if they'd ever called to double check, and like, well, no, they're sleeping at their house. Like, uh-oh, we dug ourselves a hole here.
Do your kids are they do they know about like the 80s? Is it something that they like talk about, or that they're like, oh, that looks really cool, or what? Like, do they ever? Is that anything that ever comes up in conversation, or no? Or are they kind of just locked into where they are?
So what's fun is we run with a good crew in the summer, Eric, out in Grand Haven along the beach. And one of the folks, they've kind of converted their garage. You've been there into what we call it the pub.
It's
There's
awesome.
a great thing that you can do. It's called Power Hour. And it's meant to be a drinking game, and you pick the genre, and they do a minute of every song for an hour, and every so often in the break it'll say drink. So anytime they're with us, it's always 80s Power Hour, and they get a little taste of what we grew up with. And
hair bands and synth music.
Oh, you better believe it. The clothes, the hair, and we'll pull some pictures out of my bride saying, this is how you wore your hair big, with a lot of hairspray.
You had amazing hair, bro. You had that, you still have amazing hair, but that hair that never moved. Like you could do whatever. Like it was like you could run 100 miles an hour, be sweating your freaking butt off, have just worked out for 2 hours, and your hair was like pristine.
Well, you're being kind. I'm referencing more our brides when they would do flock of seagulls and multiply it by 10 to get some huge poofs, and you couldn't even get close because there was more head than body on it.
We what did I do? Oh, we just pulled out a bunch of those pictures for my daughter like a week or two ago, like all these 80s photos of like 80s girl hairdo, where it was literally like, okay, the front is going to be either the bangs are going to be ratcheted up about 800 feet, and then the sides were either curled back, or most of the time they were like, I don't even know how to describe it. It was like they were hairsprayed, so they winged out and then got curled under the back.
Yeah.
And then the back was just like straight down. It was just like, if you looked at it from behind, it was like, looked like a helmet. And then the back of the head, just the hair went straight down.
Yeah. And think of what we started the 80s in for our clothes. We were trying to figure it out as late grade schoolers, early junior high. And then by the time high school, you kind of helped lead the charge into just blue jeans with some cowboy boots and some flannel, when others were still layering 3-collared shirts in and trying to act goofy with their hair. And it's like you said, hey, folks, we're getting ready for the next decade. Follow me.
Don't forget the brief minute of parachute pants and breakdancing gear when a bunch of us had about a 9-month breakdancing phase, when Break In and Electric Boogaloo and all those movies were huge. You remember that? Did you ever go to any of our school dances where we were breakdancing?
I did, and while I was there in a speech class, another guy, I think we can say it, Steve Funk, for his speech, brought in a piece of cardboard. In his speech he did a little breakdancing exhibition in the hallway with Rollinger.
Yeah, well, when Michael Jackson did that moonwalk thing on the MTV Music Awards, everyone was like, oh my gosh, what is that? Like, it was the most amazing thing that anyone had ever seen. And then the next thing I know, like in junior high, I was kind of like a tweener in terms of who I was hanging out with. But then I remember like Tony Danzig one day was like, hey, we're going to go do breakdancing classes. Do you want to go with us? And all of a sudden it ended up like we were going to breakdancing classes like 3 times a week. We all had cardboard in our basement. I can't even believe my body could do that stuff now. But
now, see, you had pretty good arm movements. I mean, you could do the robot, like make your arm move in about 5 different pieces. Kind of
I had
the
the pop and lock and all that stuff. Like I was I was live, bro. Live.
Did you roll with the different color Chuck Taylors? And I still don't know how that shoe cycles into fashion about every 10 to 15 years.
Oh, my daughter loves those. My outfit was the absolute worst outfit you could ever imagine. Right?
Not at the time.
Oh, at the time it was fly, right? Now it's the most awful thing you could ever think about. Here's what it was. The top was like this kind of shiny black, I don't know, polyester or something, right? And it had like a low kind of a scoop neck. The sleeves were trimmed in aqua blue, and right in the middle where the chest was, it was aqua blue fishnet. So you could see a little bit of the chest, little nipplage going on, and then it was black down to the bottom, and then I had black parachute pants, and you unzip the knee, and there was aqua inside the knee.
Whoa.
And then I had the aqua chucks.
That didn't come from Ottawa County. That's went into South Division or someplace along there to get that outfit, or maybe out at Eastbrook Mall, somewhere like that.
I think it was Eastbrook. I think everyone, like all the breakers, went out to this joint where you could buy breakdancing gear, and most of them had like a bunch of stuff, and I had like this humongous rear end, which I have always had, and I was like, I can't find a pair of these things to fit me. But the black ones with the blue knees fit, so then I planned everything else around them.
Nice. So aside from the arm, could you still put the leg movement together if need be? Could you spin around on a piece of cardboard?
Absolutely not. I would probably be in the hospital if I tried that.
But speaking of the mall too, that was a thing that we used to do as a crew.
Right? Like that's a social thing.
We've got, like you, we have a couple, but I can't tell you the last time any of the kids went there, like just as a social thing or to hang out.
Yeah, that, like you said, that was kind of one of those defaults. Like if it was Saturday afternoon and you were bored, like go to the mall, just walk around, go to Spencer's, hit the food court. You could usually always like hook up with somebody there. Somebody was there. If you got left out on the island and didn't know what was going on, the mall was kind of like the boat coming by where you had a chance to get picked up.
That's a very good point.
Do you so the mall, I can't remember what I read the other day. It talked a lot about the mall, like how much a part of that played in the social fabric of the 80s.
Sure.
And now it's just kind of like you said, they're there, and they're busy, but it's more like adults that are just there shopping. Like it's not a place where mostly kids go.
Agreed. Or the mall walkers. Now they just do everything online. It's like, well, don't you want to just go hang out? To your point, hang out with your pals and just check out some things? And it's like, no, not
Why would I do that? Yeah. My bed's really comfortable.
I can game and be online. That sounds a lot better.
That's funny. So, but what was your son's really into gaming and stuff, but what was your daughter's, what was her vibe when she was in high school?
Yeah, completely different, right? Super social, and ran with a group of girls, kind of like we talked about. Her friends through junior high were her besties all the way through high school.
Mm-hmm.
So as a parent, we love to be the destination, like to meet up before they go out for the night, before a football game, before any of the dances. I'd love having them all come over here, and really like when they'd sleep over, because then I'd get to make a big breakfast for them every morning.
Yeah.
When my son has guys over, it's, well, you need to buck the internet speed up, because if we're all going to game, it's not fast enough. So if we're at our own house, then we can all play. And they're on headphones and they're talking like you and I do. And I'm showing my age. It's like, but don't you want to be together? And he's, well, it just doesn't work as well. And if they do stay over, Eric, they don't get up till 1 or 2 on Saturday. And I get teenage boys, they like to sleep. There goes the opportunity to make them breakfast. How about on your side for your kiddos?
Yeah, no, mine are kind of like, my daughter's one of those kids that she's kind of got a really good mix. She's really intelligent, really thoughtful. There's some days where she just wants to hang out and read all day. She's a very good student, but then she's got a really good group that she likes to hang out with, and sometimes they all go out and they do a social thing. So, she's got a good mix of everything.
Okay. Nice.
So tell me, what do you like? Do you remember the whole roller skating thing? Were you ever into that?
Yeah, that was you. Now you're going early 80s or grade school and junior high where you'd have the Terry Hall dances, but they were also the roller skating parties.
Yeah. That's
You remember
crazy.
that, you were talking about sixth grade camp of kind of the fear and anxiety. And when they'd say ladies' choice and they're making the loop on the roller skates, you're like, boy, I hope they pick me, because you didn't want to be the last guy picked and stand along the hall, the rink to try to get out there and see if you couldn't skate with one of the ladies.
That was my first. I had my 13th birthday party there. Do you remember that?
I don't, but I'm asking if Troy DeBrine was there and he had his Terry Hall Roadrunner satin jacket on as part of the skate team.
You know he did, with the black skates and the yellow wheels. That dude could fly. That was my first. I think I was in like 8th grade, and my parents rented it out, and that was my first slow. The first time I ever held a girl's hand, I had a slow skate.
Do you remember who you slow skated with?
Kathy. What was her last name?
Kathy Corey.
Yes.
Nice.
That was it. Yep.
She was the one at Sandy Hill Superstars. Come on.
That is funny. Yeah, she was pretty wide open, but she was like kind of the one that people wanted to dance with, or whatever with.
Yeah. Well, my bride will reminisce. We grew up together but didn't know each other. But she and her friends, even though they went to the Christian schools, were some of the first to hold Terry Hall dances there, sans the skating. And I said, "How did you?" And she said, "Well, one of my older siblings would rent it for us, and then we'd charge a few dollars." And she said they made out like bandits, because other than a school, none of us could get into like Top of the Rock or Electric Avenue yet.
Oh my gosh, dude! Top of the Rock and Electric Avenue.
Weren't you a bouncer at one of those?
Both.
And that was pretty serious back then. That was big time. Big city guys would show up there, and I said, "I don't know how to use the fist, but I'm glad my friend Eric is there in case my mouth gets me in trouble."
I can't. I think it was Top of the Rock first, which was like all the way over on the other side of town. It was like 45 minutes to get there.
Yeah.
I think I worked there first when I was in like late high school, early college, and then I started working at Electric Avenue. But like, I'm sure they have stuff like that nowadays, but I mean, we used to go to that stuff all the time.
Yeah. And no, to answer your question, it's just the time. Well, maybe in Grand Rapids, the Bob downtown, or just some of the smaller bars, but it's not so much a dance bar where teenagers or pre 21 kids can get into anymore.
Yeah, that's what Top of the Rock was, right? It was it was under 21.
Certain days of the week, yeah, you could NA night, I believe they called it, or the one out by Lake Michigan was Escape, which was maybe a year or two after our prime.
Yeah, I don't think I went to that one, but I know that everyone went to the Rock, and then when they were 21, they started going to Electric Avenue.
Yeah.
And that was like one of the most of the time it was pretty normal. I remember one time we threw these couple dudes out, and then literally 30 minutes later, that like they drove by and like just were shooting guns. They didn't hit anything, I don't think, but it was just kind of one of those things where they were trying to freak everybody out, and it worked. It was like, oh my God, there's guns. We're like, oh, this is not what I signed up for. I signed up to throw drunk people out in the snow.
Yeah, I think it was you, Pee Wee, and maybe Morales that worked there. And I said, man, those are pretty big, solid steel doors for exits. And do you really need that? And it was either you or Larry opened up and was like, oh, what are the dents from? It's like, well, sometimes people get mad and they shoot at us. I said, oh, I don't think I'd be a bouncer anytime soon.
Also, sometimes we get like mad and throw people into the door. That would
Yeah.
sometimes dent it when they were just really belligerent and acting like idiots.
Yeah, I'm jumping ahead, but I do remember that time when Dave, am I right to use names, but Zaldivar's bachelor party in Canada, when you and the fellas decided you were going to take over a bar. And I said, I'm in over my head. I'll go get the car ready when you guys are ready to go.
Well, how about like the way that whole thing went down? Do you remember that?
I
Like
remember we
how we
were
got him
in,
down there?
was he in a cage and like duct taped and all of that stuff?
Yes.
That wouldn't fly today, but great fun then.
Nicholson's truck. And I don't know who went and got him, but Nicholson's truck, and he had a cage in the back of his truck, like a metal dog, but it was like really open. It wasn't like, it's like a crate or something. And they duct taped him up, threw him in the crate, and then they had a little pony in the coney keg in the back of the truck. And we rotated who had to ride in the back all the way from GR up to Canada. It was like a 3.5 hour drive. And we were like, oh my, we couldn't believe that we never got pulled over. It was insane.
Yeah, imagine that. Someone's in a cage in the back of a pickup today. What would happen? They'd have an all points bulletin out. You'd
Oh.
make the news. You'd be on social media within seconds.
It would. That is freaking insane. So do you like, I know my daughter like loves the 80s. She always says, I wish I could have like lived back then for a while and seen what it was like with no social media and just, being normal. Do your kids ever talk about that? Or are they just kind of like where they are?
Yeah, when you talk, is that because you're sharing stories like we're talking about now, or just she's catching on to what's on, streaming services or social media where things pop up and make it sound so cool?
Yeah, I think part of it's what we talk about. So she hears stories. And then she loves the music. Probably not from the 80s, but she likes a lot of like late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
She doesn't like the music now other than like other people. She's always kind of like, that would be cool to be back then when everyone like wasn't connected all the time.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing is just, as we talked about already, just live in the moment. Whatever you're doing right now, enjoy it. I get that you're going to check your phone on occasion, but boy, do you really need to? So when you said she'd just leave it at home or went without it, I get for parents, you got to keep your phone handy, but even my spouse, she just always checking. I said, are you even having fun with what you're doing? I mean, you're a little preoccupied with that. They're fine. We were fine. You'll find out if they're not. That's a tough thing to
Yeah.
break away from.
Yeah, but I think as it seems to me that most of the people I talk to, the dads are more like willing to do that and kind of more like that's, they're the ones that push that a little bit more. I know that I push it a lot. I've pushed it a lot more with my sons, and with the girls, it was kind of like I was probably more protective, but with the
Yeah,
sons,
we've
it was
earned
kind
that,
of like,
right?
yeah, I think so. Right.
That's the double standard. We kind of expect mischief from our boys, and the girls are like, hey, you're our angels. You're our baby girls. Unless you're with us, we got to keep a tight eye on you as much as we can.
Yeah. I feel like my wife is probably more like I am with the boys. She's more like that with the girls. Like, hey, you've got to give them a little bit of freedom. You got to give them a little bit of rope. You can't
Okay.
hold on to them like that forever because they've got to grow up. So,
How about like even their high school? You asked about my daughter. For your daughter too, in high school was the big thing. Friday night lights, going to the football game or going to basketball game. You're living in a different part of the country. Is that the thing to do, or they kind of take her to leave it? Because
no,
remember back in the day, you played, you were the athlete, but heck yeah, you wanted to be in the stands. You didn't want to miss anything going on.
yeah, it's pretty much. I mean, I live in South Carolina, and football is reigns down here. So on Friday nights, most social activities based around the game. They're
Yeah.
they're doing they're probably not watching it, but they're there being social, and it's all kind of focused around that. And pretty much any town you go to.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
is
good
it
to
still
hear.
like that up there?
Yeah, kind of that small town Americana, right?
Yeah.
Especially as Hudsonville's growing and becoming a big school system now. It's fun to go. There's great energy. The student sections is probably the biggest change I've noticed is you have some pretty enthusiastic student sections where they have super fans that
The
keep the
crazies.
chants and and it's like, man, that's a good idea. You guys were good. It was fun to watch you on the field, but we were just watching the game. There wasn't a whole lot of involvement from us.
Yeah, no, but they were always packed. That was and it was good for us too, as players. Like that's what you want. You want people to be there, and you want it to be loud, and you want it to be a fun experience. So that was a good thing. I think that's a holdover. That's a remnant that's really good that I'm glad has kind of stayed in the way our kids grow up.
Agreed.
The whole COVID thing. I think it was different up there, but my daughter's in a private school, and they closed for that first 3 or 4 weeks, like right when it happened, but they were open and that back open the last 3 weeks of the year, and they never closed again.
Wow.
Which I know a lot of places were closed for like the whole next year. Kids missed a lot.
Yeah, I won't go political on you, but Michigan basically shut down, and then they tried to go virtual, which good luck trying to get kids to log on every day and
Ugh.
just miss all those aspects. So yeah, my daughter kind of missed most of her end of her junior year, and then a big chunk of her senior year as well. Just because then, even when they went back, it was you couldn't go to any of the events or parents only for games, be it football or basketball, even outside, which seemed just odd to us.
Yeah,
So
that's sad. I feel for people that had to go through that. I'm glad that mine didn't, but I know a lot of people's did, and that's such a big part of your life, especially your junior and senior year, when it's kind of like you've already paid your dues and gone through all the crap, and now you get to be the honcho, and kind of lead everything, and you miss it. That's not cool.
yeah, agreed.
So what's the craziest story that you remember, or what's the craziest thing that you remember from high school? What's the one thing that kind of, if you're telling a story, you're thinking about a story, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that we did that.
Well, we talked running with the Jennison crew. I would just say the fun, kind of innocence fun on the weekends where we had a house to hang out at. That sounds really bad, but you think no one was out driving. We weren't roaming the streets. We were just hanging with our friends. And at Hudsonville, which at the time was a pretty small school system compared to Jennison,
Yeah.
the kid that got voted most school spirit, and this was unheard of at the time, blew up a phone booth and a post office box, and they brought like the FBI, and it was a federal crime was what he did. It's like, who does that in little old Hudsonville, no less?
They blew up when you say they blew up a post office box, what is that? Like
One of those big
one of those
blue
big blue things that you drop stuff into?
Yep, and then again, most people wouldn't know what this is, a phone booth. One of those the
They blew it up?
rectangle or they blew it up. School was canceled. We got out early, and we're all laughing, saying, "Well, this was precursor to terrorism or domestic terrorism. This was just a kid with a bad intention or wanted to leave his mark." And I think we made the national news for it.
Wow.
How about for you at Jennison?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I remember was, this was stupid, but a lot of the things you remember that you did in high school were stupid. One of our friends, his girlfriend had broken up with him, or they got in a fight or whatever, and he was like, let's go egg her house and TP everything. And there was probably 10 of us. I mean, that house got lamb blasted with eggs, and then the entire front yard got TP'd. I mean, it was just a tragic mess. And I guess the somewhere along the line, the dad saw us out there and called the cops. But he kind of alerted us. He walked out on the porch and said, I called the cops. And it was like ants going everywhere. But I remember Tris, one of our buddies, for some reason, he like ran to the field behind the house that was like as open as could be. And one of the cop cars like just drove onto the field, hit him with a spotlight, and arrested him. And the rest of us got away. But I remember like we were all somewhere kind of, we either went home and everyone heard, oh, he got arrested. And we were all like, holy crap. And the cops had him and they grilled him and he flipped on everybody. he flipped on everybody that was there. And we got a phone call later that night. It was like, hey, the cops know who was there. They're not going to press charges if we show up and clean up. So the next day, like all of us had to go back over to the house, look the mom and dad in the eye as we cleaned all the egg off the house and the toilet paper off the trees. It was a humbling experience. I kept thinking, man, I'm glad we didn't do any kind of like serious crime with him. We'd all be locked up. He flipped in a heartbeat.
I remember that because I was there just across the street. Again, fear of
watching everything happen.
Watching. And I remember like everyone scattered and he just stopped, like froze, like, dude, they're not going to get you. And they grabbed him and was, hey, man, I had to give your name. I said, I wasn't involved. I'm not coming back.
You're like,
but that
I was
just
again, watching. I'm a spectator.
But again, same idea for the kids of, TPing or doing the eggs. I can't tell you the last time I've seen a tree that got TP'd or egged in greater Hudsonville, Jenison. It's been years, maybe even a decade or more.
Yeah, I think kids today would think, oh my gosh, if I do that, I'm like going to get in real trouble,
or shot. It's just different now.
Yeah. Well, too, everyone has cell phones now. Like you think about the stuff that we did that was just kind of like, oh, that's innocent fun, but nowadays it's everyone has a phone, and so you got to worry about, oh, are they going to videotape me and then make a big deal out of it, and then like I'm just not going to do it. I think that's what a lot of the stuff is. Our kids just like, it's not worth it,
Well, you're spot on. And how do you tell your kids, like, once it's been recorded or it's been posted, it's there forever. We're telling stories and we relived it, and hopefully people believe us, but there's no proof or documentation to it. And even when we get together, people say, I'm going to video this. Like, no, I don't want you to just live in the moment, have fun and be silly. I don't need to see how dumb I look doing this. I think that's part of the way for kids too. It's like, don't you want to do this? It's like, no. And maybe that's been embedded in. It's like, you don't want this to come back and haunt you.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think there's this big kind of fear factor of, and 10 years ago when all this stuff was starting to happen, people were like, oh, I don't care if you record. Like now the kid, I know my daughter who's 17, she's very aware, and she's not the kind of kid that would go do stuff, but she's hyper aware of the fact that, anything you do is out there for people to see and will never go away. So
excellent point. Yeah.
It's something they have to deal with. Well, hey, this has been fun. This is kind of, when I started this podcast, my idea was like, I'm going to talk to some people that do stuff I'm interested in. Like I'm starting to get into archery, like that's a big interest. So I'm interviewing a guy next week, but I kind of want to just intersperse that with people I grew up with over time and just kind of like talk about the stuff that we did, because for me, that stuff's so much fun to talk about. Like you said, we don't have it on a phone, but to me it's better because we've got it kind of locked in and there's an emotion tied to it.
Yeah, what I enjoy about our relationship, Eric, is we don't get to see each other as often, and you've been very kind and generous to invite me down. But when I see you,
someday you will come down. I'm still holding out hope that you will at some point venture down past the Mason-Dixon line and visit us.
But it's like anything else, the 80s music, or when we talk and we reminisce, it takes me back. Not that we're adults and we're professionals and we have families. It's let's go back to our youthful experience of just when we had a good time. Yeah, where there was mischief, but man, that was our formative years of just having a good time and hanging with good friends. So appreciate the opportunity today. It's fun to catch up like that.
Yeah, man, it's cool. And I'll make sure that we get, a link of this stuff out so you can share it with all the folks that you can still get to run with a lot of that crowd, which is awesome. So they'll get to relive a little bit of it with us. So I appreciate you being with us, brother. It's great
Appreciate
talking
all my best. Thank you.
All right, man.
See you, buddy.
You're still here?
Thanks for listening to the Do Not Go Quietly podcast
It's over.
with Eric Wilson.
Go home. Go.